Government calls Cecil Kirk.
Kirk, if you would, please, sir, if you'd come forward. Have you been sworn?
No, sir, I have not.
All right, if you would, please, stand and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in the proceedings before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Take a seat.
Thank you. If you would, please, sir, just have a seat right there.
As you know, Mr. Kirk, in 1978, the House of Representatives Select Committee on Assassinations reinvestigated the assassination of President Kennedy. Were you one of 20 experts chosen from around the country to sit on a panel to look at the photographic evidence?
Yes, sir, I was.
Mr. Kirk, was one of the main jobs of the panel to determine when, on the Zapruder film, it appeared that President Kennedy and Governor Connally were reacting to an external stimulus, that is, being shot?
Yes, it was.
From your examination of the Zapruder film and frames, how many times did your panel conclude that President Kennedy was shot?
Twice.
What about Governor Connally?
Governor Connally was shot one time.
Did your panel conclude that any other bullets were fired at the time of the assassination?
Yes.
One more bullet?
Yes.
Was this a bullet that apparently missed both the President and Governor Connally?
That's correct.
Was this the first shot?
Yes.
All right. Can we see the film at this time now? All the way through? Mr. Kirk, intermittent frames from 160 through 169 are now going to be put on the screen, and would you please point out to the jury your observations about these frames?
Okay, to orientate the jury, I'm going to use a light pen here and draw a circle around Governor Connally. You will note that Governor Connally is looking in this direction. What you're going to see now is equivalent to a half second. And I would ask you to try to concentrate just on Governor Connally. You will note now that Governor Connally is now looking in this direction, back over his right shoulder, back up towards the scoop book depository. And all of this took place in half a second.
Your panel concluded that this first bullet then did not hit either Kennedy or Connally, is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you point out to the jury what you see or saw that caused you to conclude that the President was physically reacting to being hit by the first of the two bullets that hit him?
Okay, to orientate the jury, I'll first fix Governor Connally for you. And that's Governor Connally. You will note that he's still turned and facing to his right. I'll clear the screen. And now we have President Kennedy. His elbow presently is resting right here on the side of the limousine. And to orientate you, this area right here is the cuff of his sleeve. Can we have next frame, please?
All right.
Now you see that the President's arm here is super extended. We interpreted this to be a stimulus. This happened an 1/18 of a second.
So that's the President physically reacting to being hit for the first time, is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you point out to the jury what caused the majority of the panel to conclude that Governor Connally was reacting to being hit by the same bullet?
This is Governor Connally. You can see that if I could draw it for you, this shoulder is higher than this shoulder. This is the President here. It's one hand, and this is the other hand. If I could have the next frame, please. Here you can see Governor Connally. His left shoulder, again, is considerably higher than his right shoulder. He's going down like this, if you would. The President is here. He's going in up to what I can best describe as the defensive lineman stance.
Connally then would have been responding or reacting just over a second after Kennedy, is that correct?
That's correct. Change, please. We see now that the governor has almost turned around. He's actually facing back to the rear, and Mrs. Kennedy now has responded to her husband And actually, her husband is leaning over in the direction of his wife. Change. This is 312, and this is by far one of the clearer frames, and it shows the orientation of the president. And you can also see that Mr. Connolly now is starting to lean back on his wife. She actually is pulling him back towards her. Next slide, please. This is the headshot at 313. This mass that we see here is what the medical people call particulate matter, but us lay people will call brain tissue, blood, and other items that's being emitted from the president's head.
Okay. Looking at frame 313, is one of the points that caused your panel to conclude the shot came from the rear the fact that the spray of brain matter is all to the front?
Yes, that's correct.
Did your panel prepare a high contrast photo of that frame 313?
Yes, sir, we did.
Can we put that on the screen?
You can see that the particulate matter is going forward of the president, coming in this direction. You can see the cone here of mass that's going in a forward direction.
In addition to the spray of brain matter all to the front, do frames 313 and 314 actually show the president's head being pushed forward slightly by the momentum of the bullet?
Yes, it does.
Can we see those frames now and point that out to the jury?
Again, this is frame 312, and I would ask the jury to note that this is the rear seat, the back of the seat. And, of course, this is the body, the torso of the president at 312. 313, please. We concluded that there is a definite space opening there between the seat and the president at 313, moving forward. 314, please. 314, the space is larger.
So he's moving forward.
He's
at
moving
313 and 314.
Yes. At 315,
Starts to go back.
He starts to go back. 316. He goes back a little bit more. 317. And he's almost back to the seat, as you can see there.
Did your panel conclude that this head snap to the rear, or whatever it is, was caused, as some of the critics have contended, by a bullet from the front?
No, sir, we did not.
So the three shots were fired, according to the photographic evidence, in approximately 8 2/10 seconds. Is that correct?
Not taking into consideration that we don't know exactly when Governor Connolly heard the shot to go off.
But a minimum of 8.2 seconds.
That's correct.
Was there any other photographic evidence indicating to your panel shots from the rear?
Yes, sir.
Could those exhibits be shown on the screen, and could you point it out to the jury what caused your panel to conclude
yes.
that shots came from the rear?
This is one of the Zapruder films, and this is actually before the president was shot. As a matter of fact, you can see him here quite clearly, and his arm is resting on the side of the vehicle, waving. My attention is drawn to this little girl right here. She's actually running parallel to the presidential limousine. You can see already that she's looking back over her right shoulder at something. The most important event in her life, she's taking her head, her vision away from the president. Next slide, please. You can see now that the president is continuing on down the street, and the little girl is standing completely still with her hands beside her, and she's looking back up towards the school book depository.
Okay, can we put the backyard photo series on the screen? Mr. Kirk, this appears to be a photograph of Oswald holding a rifle with a revolver in his holster, and I believe he's holding 2 newspapers up. Mr. Oswald told Captain Fritz during his interrogation that that was not he in that photograph. It was his head, but it was superimposed upon someone else's body. Did your photographic panel address itself to that issue?
Well, we were asked to identify whether or not the photograph was faked or not. Could I have the next slide, please? The allegation was that this area in here was created by montage. In other words, that part of Oswald's face being matched up to a figure, not Oswald, below the chin line. And a lot of the critics interpreted this line as being signs of a montage. Next slide up, please. But when we look at the first generation photograph, in other words, the photograph made off of the negative that was recovered by the Warren Commission, we see that line is not there. But as you copy photographs and increase contrast, anytime you have a shadow, it creates the illusion of being a line.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. No further questions.
Court, please.
May proceed.
Sergeant Kirk, you've looked here during the course of your testimony for this jury. You've looked at some enhanced, high contrast analyses that were made. Could we have that so that the jury could see it again? It's the enhanced one, you know, the one that looks like a balloon being squirted. Just to make it simple, if we have a balloon in our hand full of water and I smash it from this direction until it bursts, the water may well come out against the direction of my fist. Isn't that true?
Only if the hole is large enough for the water to come back out at you.
Thank you. The hole in the president's head was almost 4 square inches. Isn't that true?
Entrance or exit?
The hole in the side of his head.
The exit, yes.
Now, you made something of a little girl that was turning her head. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you know what was being said to the little girl when she turned her head?
No.
Do you make room for the possibility that her name was, let's say, Mary, and that her mother said, Mary? Do you make room for that possibility?
Didn't see a woman in that frame, so I don't know if Mother was calling Mary or not.
Well, okay, you did. I do guess that you believe that the little girl had a mother, don't you?
Yes.
That the little girl's mother was somewhere.
Yes.
Probably within calling distance. Do we need to argue about it?
Well,
probably within calling distance.
I can't concede that, no.
All right. You don't make room for the possibility that all that happened in the little girl's case was that her mama called her.
I guess that's possible.
Yes. Did the panel vote on that? Well, sir, did the panel
On whether or not
vote?
Mother called it?
Yes.
Maybe? No.
Now, Conley told you, or provided information for the committee, did he not, that the first bullet hit the president, that he was not hit by the first bullet that hit the president, that he was hit by a separate second bullet.
That's not his testimony. Governor Connolly did not testify to that, Your Honor. It's a mischaracterization of his
All
testimony.
right. So now at this time, I'd like to have the Conley interview presented to the jury so that the jury can decide.
Talking about his testimony before the Warren Commission and the House Select Committee. I don't know about any private interview.
His interview was a public interview, Your Honor. The court's seen it. It's proper under these circumstances.
I have seen the interview, and I think it's proper cross-examining. I will allow it.
Thank you. Would you produce the Conley interview, please?
Let's move on,
Yes.
counsel, if you would, please.
It's ready.
I am convinced beyond any question of a doubt that the first shot that was fired did not hit me. Then I was hit. And I was not then, and I have no memory, no recollection of the sound of the shot that hit me. And beyond any question of a doubt, the third shot did not hit me. Ms. Conley has the very definite feeling, a very strong conviction, that the first shot that was fired hit the president. The second shot that was fired hit me. The third shot that was fired hit the president. Unquestionably, when the first shot was fired, I recognized it as a shot. I thought of nothing else but that it was a rifle shot. I turned to my right. I had time to think. I had time to react. And I turned to my right to look back over my right shoulder to see if I could see anything unusual, and particularly to see if I could catch him out of the corner of my eye. I did not see the president out of the corner of my eye, and I was in the process of turning back to look over my left shoulder. And had about come to the point where I was looking straight forward again when I felt the impact of the bullet that hit me.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to play the Zapruder film, and I ask the jury to please concentrate on Governor Conley because we've just heard his testimony. Watched Governor Conley. Watch him lurch back. There. Thank you. Now, could you bring up frame 312? Do you see the relationship of Mrs. Kennedy's face to the president? Mr. Kirk?
Yes, I do.
And at the time he's being hit in the head, wherever it hits him in the head, her face is in the very proximity of his face, is it not?
It's to one side of his face.
As a matter of fact, if the bullet came from the rear, Mr. Kirk, and splashed all of the particulate matter out in front, wouldn't it have covered her face almost totally with that particulate matter?
Not necessarily.
Thank you. That's all I need of that. Mr. Kirk, you were talking about a picture of Mr. Oswald, remember, holding the gun. Well, that picture showed him with a rifle and a pistol and a communist newspaper. Isn't that true?
Don't know about the politics of the newspaper, but you're basically right, yes.
Yes. It was all of the evidence that was needed in one picture to convict Lee Oswald if somebody found the picture. Isn't that true?
No.
Now, I want to ask you a simple question. Have you ever examined a photograph, Mr. Kirk, that was phonied up by the CIA? I see you laugh.
No, I'm not laughing.
I don't find it amusing.
First of all, if I found a phony photograph, how would I know it was done by the CIA?
Well, I don't know. Have you ever examined a photograph that the CIA phonied up? To your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no.
Have you ever seen one that was messed with by the KGB?
I have no way of knowing.
That's right. You really don't know, do you, Mr. Kirk, how sophisticated the methods of the KGB and the CIA are in making fake photographs. Isn't that true?
No.
You don't know, do you?
Yes, I do.
You make room for the possibility that the CIA or the KGB could fool you?
No.
You don't think they could?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Kirk, thank you very much. You may step down.